Good afternoon, Eugene. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jan. I'm great. How are you today?
Great. I'm enjoying life out here in the countryside, and I love this wide open space, fresh air, growing my own food. And that brings us to this episode here today, which is talking about smart cities. This would be my idea of a digital prison. I can't think of anything worse, but I would ask everyone listening to listen closely to the information about smart cities and ask, is it smart for you as a citizen, or is it just smart for the establishment? And also, we're going to put some excellent links in the description field. One is
Yeah.
the website of a wonderful woman named Sandi Adams. And Sandi Adams actually flew over to Ireland for our Think Local conference in 2023. That conference, three of them had previously been canceled, but the fourth one to be canceled was canceled just about an hour and a half before it started by the hard left Antifa terrorists. They obviously didn't like seeing people like Sandi Adams was coming over, and Dr. Matthias Desmond and James Patrick, the film director. So we had an amazing lineup. It was canceled, but we moved the next day to another venue and did actually have those discussions. But we'll put all those links in there. So smart cities is something I've been looking at the last couple of years. So today is going to be a good one. If everyone can like, share, subscribe, and comment, because conversations like this get shadow banned by the by Big Brother. So make sure you get it out far and wide.
Absolutely. So, Jana, we kind of don't really get into this type of stuff too often, but I think there's a few points, I guess, when we go through this. And at the very end, we're going to play the World Economic Forum video, you'll own nothing and be happy video, which has been taken off the web now, actually, because there's some embarrassing statements in it. I think that they don't want it to be seen anymore. So we have a copy of it. We'll play it.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll go through this smart city stuff first, this vision of a hyper-connected planet, technocratic society. And I guess there is a kind of a mindset, a technocratic mindset out there, which is you've got to control everything. You've got to monitor everything everybody's doing, and you've got to control what they're doing. And the justification being used for this now is climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the justification for doing all this stuff. Because of climate change, we've got to control everything. Et cetera, because we're to save the planet, right? No.
COVID was a warm up. COVID was the starter of the 7-course meal. If you're, anyone who maybe is watching, who's not from Ireland, Ireland had some of the longest lockdowns in the world. We could not leave our homes and go more than 5 kilometers. There were police stops on every road. We were getting questioned. We couldn't buy non-essentials like children's shoes and toys, yellow tape in the shops. Even the playgrounds were taped. People were masked up. So that got so many people into compliance. I believe it was really a compliance and an intelligence test. That was a warm-up. Smart cities would be like COVID lockdown on a permanent basis, all done through digital controls, not just through self-accepted compliance.
Yeah, and I guess it's this kind of controlled society, which would be very similar to China today. Like China would have quite a lot of the elements that we're talking about here, including the whole social credit stuff. But smart cities, we'll go through the terminology here so that people understand it. So there's a few definitions up front. It's an urban area that uses digital technology to collect data and operate services. So it's this highly controlled, and it's feedback. It uses lots of cameras and sensors and everything like that. And so everything is being monitored and checked, etc., all of the time. And they're using AI, etc., to maybe automate aspects of it. And we'll talk about a little bit more some of the stuff they might use AI for. And you've got obviously delivering services, policing, etc. So highly controlled, highly monitored, etc. Taking away an awful lot of your freedom, and certainly your privacy is gone, right? So there's no question about it. That's what this is. So it's a communistic type society. Like, it's important to realize that. And again, you'll see that later on, maybe when we get through the presentation a bit more. This is a communistic society that they're talking about. I use that term communistic as in highly controlled, but that you will own nothing, right? Because you won't need to own anything. That's kind of the premise, etc. So we'll see that as we go. So technocracy is this form of government where the people actually controlling things, the country, etc. They're technocrats, as you would call them, right? They're people who who like to administer a highly controlled society like this, not people who are elected by the populace. Like, it's a very different model, right? There was a whole technocracy movement in the US that back in the last century didn't really go anywhere, but it's kind of raised its head again with the World Economic Forum and with the United Nations. And there's definitely people in there who are on this page of huge levels of government control. Now, there's certain people that actually feel comfort in this, that take comfort in living in this type of society. Seriously, there's people who prefer to live in this type of society than be a free society. So that's a factor, right? And the way they're indoctrinating children in schools right now is to get them to accept a technocratic society like this, to accept all the rules and everything. And that anybody who's outside of this, who doesn't agree with this stuff, is a bigot, far right, etc., etc. The narrative, right? We know the narrative. We know the terms.
And it's a good time, Eugene. I'll just jump in. Anyone who wants to know more about the digital prison, the totalitarianism, I would just recommend people can go to Eddie Hobbs' Counterpoint channel, or Eddie Hobbs. I think it's eddiehobbs.com. He wrote a book, Breaking the Silence on the Return of Totalitarianism, and it's on Amazon, but you can go to his website as well and download that book. It really talks about what's happening and how to join the dots with all of these psychological operations or attacks on the family unit, children's mental health, our cultures, and all about this digital prison. So not a conspiracy, it's backed up with evidence, but Breaking the Silence on the Return of Totalitarianism. Highly recommend that book.
Yeah. We won't go into the details of who's driving all of this stuff, etc. That's a different discussion. But just to understand that this is a mindset, a technocratic mindset. We often talk about the technocratic narrative, which is the root of this thing. That's the narrative they're trying to permeate into our schools, into our society through the media, so that people will buy into it, and they'll buy into living in a 15-minute city, living with all of this sort of observation that's going on, all this control, etc. So they want people to buy into that. So definition, this French urbanist Carlos Moreno, he brought in this notion of the 15-minute city, where everything that you needed was within a 15-minute walk or a bike ride. So you'd never needed to use a car, for example. You don't need to own a car, right? Because you won't own a car in this new society. That's the thing. So everything you can do is in this. So you can describe that as a 15-minute city, or you can decide it as a 15-minute prison is the other term. I think some people might think that. Because in a world where you've got social credit system and you've got the control that goes with social credit, which would also control your ability to go outside of a boundary, for example. If you go outside of, say, a city boundary, your whole digital currency may not work anymore. You can't go outside. You're basically hemmed in because of the technocratic control that they have over you. So that's just an example.
Yeah, we saw Eugene, talk about just to jump in about the dangers of digital, the DOD dangers of digital. There was a system outage, I don't know if it was on Amazon or something happened this week, and there's a lot of speculation of, did someone on our side or someone, hack it, or did someone who works in there that's actually good do that to show people this is what happens if we go digital? We've all had those issues where maybe the debit card doesn't work, the tap on the phone doesn't work, and people without cash are stuck. On a personal experience, my children were away on holiday, and a card had been used too many times during the day, so it couldn't be used anymore, and couldn't be used to buy food for the dinner or tolls to get the car through tolls. And on top of that, an electrical car broke down as well. So you think, isn't digital great? Electric cars? No, you can't buy, you can't drive. So nothing's better than good old cash in the pocket and, a car that doesn't rely on the grid. So, we've all been in those positions, and I hope there's more system outages. I hope there's some sort of attack where people can't access their bank accounts, because that might wake people up out of the slumber. This is the world that we would be living in permanently if we accept this.
Yeah, you need a backup plan. You really do.
Absolutely.
So, but obviously, again, these technocrat people want control over you. They want to be able to control you. They want to be able to discipline you. Because obviously, if you've been bold and you've said something bad or whatever, we can restrict you. etc. So that's part of it as well.
And
So let's move
carbon
on.
credits,
So
Eugene. I'll just jump
yeah,
in one more thing this week.
yeah,
It's been a week of wildness. There was food, I think, in the UK that had the number of carbon credits or the carbon
right,
score on
right.
the food. So back to this is all communism. The whole climate scam is all about communism, control, carbon credits, and taxes. So guess what, Eugene? You've actually driven too much this week, so we're going to shut you off. You can't drive anymore. You've eaten enough of your carbon credits. No more beef for you.
No, absolutely, Jana. It's insidious, and I guess people on the left who see themselves as leftists, etc., should really wake up to the fact that the people driving this thing ultimately are the wealthiest people on the planet.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not the you or I or the people looking for social justice that are driving this stuff. It's the wealthiest people on the planet. And what's the reason? Why are they doing it? They're not doing it for the good of you
No.
or anything like that, or the good of a trans person or a black person or Islamic person or anything like that. They don't care about any of those things. They care about themselves and the control they have. And that's what's driving the left at the moment. So here we go. 5G definition. So we've got 5G at the moment, talked about the Internet of Things, Internet of Everything. And then they're talking about this transformative, there's a word these people love to use, is transformative 6G, which is the opposite. You now get into the whole virtual reality world. They call it here extended reality, multi-sensory extended reality, this multiverse cross-reality environments. You could be talking into the transhumanism stuff here. You're getting into a bit of that as well. So they call it the Internet of No Things, which is kind of an interesting term. So that term comes up in the rest of the presentation. So that's just another aspect of it. So where does this come from? Well, it comes from the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. Where else? Here it is, the Smart Cities program from the United Nations. You can see it here. We put the website into the thing, into the description, so you can take a look at it. And also the World Economic Forum. Our alliance is creating smart city governance, etc., etc. So there's loads of work going on this stuff. Loads of work going on. There's smart city projects going on where they've got these kind of examples of a smart city. I think they're trying to do this in Athlone. I think I saw something about Athlone perhaps becoming a smart city. So, Jana, we've got this thing called the Smart City Charter, and we have the link here, and there's a document, and people can take a look at it. It gives you a lot of background on this thing. And they have these regular meetings where they would meet up, people representing the kind of smart cities around the world. So there's an interesting thing here, just a subtlety that may be lost on people. So the United Nations obviously have a level of control through the governments in each of the countries, right? So their government representatives attend the United Nations, etc. The Smart City program is a way of getting control at a city level. Yep. It's a parallel control mechanism, right? So they get the representatives of the cities together driving this initiative. Do you see what's going on?
Yes, yeah.
So they can drive their narrative and policies directly with the people in the large cities across the world, separate to the governments.
Yeah.
Separate to government policy, separate to things elected policy. So just this is subtlety there, right? And this is why you might see things coming into your city and you're saying, well, geez, I didn't know that was happening. Like, how is that happening in my city? And it's not really happening across the rest of the country. It's because they've bypassed your government, gone directly to the city officials, right? So just to kind of take note of that. That's something that's going on as well. So they've got this thing called the Smart City Charter. And as people then meet and they have these regular meetings. So we're going to take an example from the 2024 meeting, the Smart City in the era of Internet of No Things, as we mentioned earlier. Yeah. So these people from these think tanks attend this, right? So this guy from a Finnish think tank did this presentation. And it's kind of an example. I'm using it here as a kind of an example of what you can expect. It's an example of the mindset. It's an example of where people see this stuff going, right? And in some cases, some of it's in reality already today. So this guy from this Finnish think tank talked about this, the Internet of No Things, and we'll put a full link to the speech. Now, we had to actually translate it because it wasn't in English, so we've taken a translation of it. And we're going to go through the points he was making in his speech, which are part of kind of what people would be seeing, where they'd see this going. So he talks about visions of a hyper-connected planet, right? Using 6G, 5G, 6G to connect everything together. And he uses that term Internet of No Things, which is kind of alluding to 6G and this augmented reality and the use of sensors and stuff like that. So the first thing he talks about is resource efficient society. No building stands empty. The notion here, of course, is that you don't own property, right? That your property is shared, that the building you live in, like the apartment you live in, you sleep in it at night, you take your meals. When you go out during the day, somebody else could be using it for something else, right? That's the notion behind this, right? So there could be a business meeting going on in your apartments, whatever it is. Cars don't drive empty, right? So you don't own a car, so that everything is essentially carpooled. So the cars that are going on the street they're carpooled, etc. You don't own your own car, right? It's the notion of this stuff, right? Or you're using public transport, of course, is the other thing, or you're walking because it's a 15-minute city. And they talk about devices and machines generating their own energy. Now, there's only a certain feasibility with that. Certain sensors and stuff that are very low power could do that, but it's not feasible for anything of any substance, obviously. So that's limited. But we have the notion today of security cameras that have solar power on them. Now, obviously, if you get, if you live in a country where half the year it's dark, that's not going to work too well. But that's the kind of notion here, that things would, things like sensors and stuff like that would be self-powered. And he talks about energy harvesting sensors, etc. And large power plants seems pointless. Now, that doesn't make sense, because you're always going to need, and this is a problem with the whole green energy thing, where people believe that you can survive off just pure renewables all the time. And we know that didn't work. It didn't work in Portugal and Spain recently, where they had serious outages because they couldn't keep up the phase frequency of the electricity in their network, and the whole network came down. And for that, you have to have a reliable, ultra reliable source, which is either fossil fuel or nuclear, or a very large battery array. And that's not going to last long, right? So ultimately you need something like nuclear potentially in the future to be that main solid source of power, and it's augmented by the renewables. The renewables can't be the only thing, because if they're the only show in town, you're going to lose your network every now and again. So there is always going to be large power plants and stuff like that. You're not going to get away from that. Now, that could be the new nuclear power stations. They can be very compact. They don't need to be huge, large power stations as we've known in the past. So here we go, post-choice society. So they're basically saying that artificial intelligence will make all your decisions for you. Now, we did a video on Wikipedia on how artificial intelligence can be corrupted by the data that's fed into it. So do you really want artificial intelligence making all of your decisions? And we'll come to this later in this presentation about, elections and using AI to actually determine the outcome of an election. So artificial intelligence, I think, can be very, very helpful. I think in terms of giving you the shortest route from A to B and the cheapest way of getting from A to B. I've done that. I've used it for that. And it's great, yeah. But the notion that you will use it for every single decision you make and that it'll just happen automatically and you will never think about it, I think that's not a good notion. I think that's a way of giving away your freedom again. And I think,
and in addition to that, Eugene, is artificial intelligence will never be as good as human beings, because we have soul, spirit, and creativity. We have innovation, and the artificial intelligence, although it has a place in some parts of society, as you referenced, it replaces human connection. So for myself, over the last several years, myself and my children, when we go to the shop, we absolutely refuse self-checkout. And I'm very clear when I go to the one or two tills at the shop, at the big shop that are left. I say, I'm in this queue because, one, I like human connection, but two, I'm here to save your job. And a lot more people are moving to the queues with human connection.
Yeah, I think see, this is the balance, Jana. I think I use the fast checkouts if I got a couple of quick things and I'll do them, but I do prefer the personal interaction as well. I'd be on the same page. And I think you need this notion that you don't have a choice. Like, he's talking about a post-choice society. No, sorry, I don't want that. Like, where you don't have any choice and the AI makes up all your decisions and you've no option, right? That's the issue here. I think it really is. Yeah. And we don't want that. So
it's about options. I think that's the key word. It's about options.
Yeah, exactly. And it can, AI is great in certain things and it can help you in lots of great ways, but no, not the only show in town, so to speak.
No.
Now, there's a subtlety here, and you kind of, when you were talking, it kind of brought to my mind, AIs follow certain patterns. They follow the patterns that they've been trained in, right? That's how AIs work. So one of the things that they've been trying to do with education is conform people to think with certain patterns so that they can be controlled by AIs. Because what an AI can't deal with is something that's off the reservation, like something that's totally different, something new that you just conjured up that never happened before, that nobody ever thought of before. An AI can't deal with that because it doesn't have any pattern to follow for that.
Yep.
So they want to subject our children to conforming, to think in certain patterns and ways so that they can be controlled by AIs. Think about that for a minute. Think about that. Limiting your thought. This is why critical thinking is being stifled. And people are being forced into this groupthink based on the narrative. You understand?
Yep.
So that
Yep.
an AI can now control you because it's trained in that, and so it can control you. So just that's a thought for another day, right? Here's post-ownership society. So here we go. Here's the communist bit coming into it. So you don't need to own anything, right? Because everything will be shared. The AI and all the technocratic infrastructure will be working out who needs what and when and where, and can deliver it to you with the drone, right? The iron, you're doing your ironing every week, so the drone will deliver the iron when you need it, and then you give it back like a library book. And you don't need to have your house full of stuff, right? So you can get the stuff borrowed when you need it, right? And it'll be delivered to you. That's the notion here, right? It doesn't make sense to own anything anymore. Everything is shared, etc. This is the communist view, right? This is where this thing becomes communism, as you can see. The right to private property
Eugene,
goes
many
away.
people, I'll just jump in on a proposal that was the 39th Amendment right to housing bill. I think it's dead in the water now, but they tried to push through this bill, and it was to delimit the right to private property. And it said in the bill, we can delimit your right to private property for the common good, or some verbiage. We can post the link to the bill. And that was sponsored by no one other than Richard Boyd Barrett, Paul Murphy, and those Marxists. But that meant, and they changed citizen to resident. So for the common good of all residents. So that means that these floods of thousands new to the parish flooding in could have the rights to your home, Eugene, over yourself, your rights to your house, or the citizens of Ireland, for the common good. They will, if they get their way, they will try to move the senior members of our society, the older people who worked hard all their life, bought their home, they have their 4-bed home, and there might only be 1 or 2 living in that home. But that's their home. That's their garden. They shouldn't be forced to move into a smart city or a 2-bed or a 1-bed flat, in a high rise. They want to live in that 4-bed country home. And if they still have a fireplace, they can burn their turf or coal. But the new homes, don't forget, they're phasing out the fireplace in the name of the climate. You can't burn your turf anymore. You can't burn your wood. You have to have the electric heat in your house with that air to water pump and the smart meter outside that can flip your electricity and heat off with the click of a button.
Yep. No, absolutely, Jana. So so this is getting into the realm of, again, taking away your freedom, taking away your ability to own your own stuff, right? And you're in this communist world where everything is shared, et cetera, et cetera. So this is good. Post-market society. So they talk here about that everything will be controlled by AI. There'll be the sophisticated systems controlling the allocation of resources. Again, you can assure, they doesn't use the term equity, but I'm sure, you could bring equity into this. And one of the things they kind of allude to here is that, someone may have purchased something or uses a certain item, and they don't quite know the reason what you use it for, right? Or etc. But with all the sensors and stuff in this new technocratic information-based world, they'll know exactly how often you used it, when did you use it, what did you use it for, etc. So they've got all this extra information that they wouldn't have today. So, they'll know that you do the ironing twice a week, and you do it on, 10 items each time you use it, etc. Right? So they're building up this profile of you in terms of what you do, how you use everything, right? That's what it's talking about. So let's move on. So post-energy society. So again, he's talking about this kind of energy efficient, energy self-sufficiency. Now, I think energy sovereignty is a huge thing. And I think at a national level, you need energy sovereignty. I think it's a bit much to expect individuals to have that, but certainly at a national level, we need that. So that's maybe park that. Talks about energy harvesting. I think this is some of this makes sense at a very low power level, but again, when you get up to what's going to drive your car, for example, or do your wash, your weekly wash, you need a decent source of stable power for that, and it's not going to be, the stuff that you have on your roof or whatever isn't going to be enough usually to give you that reliably. It'll supplement it, but it won't be the thing that does it for you. So post-energy society is kind of a crazy thing. So, again, he's kind of alluding to the fact that all these sensors and stuff will be self-powered or with very low power batteries and stuff like that. But, I think there's a feasibility here. Now, this is the one that, the post-voting society. So because we know exactly what people are doing and what they want, there's less need for elections and majorities or votes, right? So just use the behavioral data and the AI will elect the best candidates.
The technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore because we know what the result will be.
And who do you think those best candidates are going to be? They're going to be the technocrats. They're going to be the people that service the goals of the people running the society, the ultra rich. That's who they're going to be. They're not going to be the people representing the people. They're not going to be somebody who's going to represent individuals and stuff like that. No, they're going to be the people who are bought into this society and where they want to bring this society to, etc. So that's a pretty scary one. So I think you can see this. This is a very communistic thread through this. Own a private property, taking away your voting rights, and your whole privacy is taken away as well because everything is shared now. You don't have your own car anymore. You're getting into a car that 10 other people have used earlier in the day, or there's people coming into your house because you're sharing your house with people, etc. Right? So maybe some people want to live in that sort of society. So I guess, Janet, the thing here is that they're justifying all of this stuff is the climate change agenda is really the key thing pushing this, right? That's the key. That's the silver bullet that they're using right now to bring all of this stuff in and justify it. And, that's what people need to be aware of. And the problem with the climate change thing is that that's multiple agendas, many of which have nothing to do with climate change. They have to do with wealth transfer and self-enrichment and also some socio-economic things in terms of the particular regions that they want to see progress, which is not the Western world, it's the Eastern world. So people need to be very careful about climate change for those reasons and the sincerity of it. And if there's one area that people need to be looking at alternative information on climate, climate is that area. Because don't be watching the mainstream media narrative on it all the time because you're going to get nothing. Don't be listening to the United Nations all the time because you're just going to get the same mantra all the time. We like our channel and stuff is not focused on this. There's plenty of other people that are. We'll put a couple of links in the description to some channels I'd recommend on this topic. And there's a reality there which is very different from the narrative.
Climate now is the way that they feel that it's a way they can virtue signal for those really moral, ethical people to grab onto the green leaf who really believe the climate alarmism is about keeping the earth clean and green. Everyone agrees we should keep the earth clean and green. But if people can't see through the fact that these globalists flying around the world in private jets talking about how we shouldn't drive cars or own houses, if they can't see through the hypocrisy of that, that's the problem. But the climate appears to be the moral part. And, even around in the schools in Ireland, Helen McEntee is going around the schools to raise the climate flag, the green flag, they're calling it the green flag. People think it's about a clean earth. They have no idea that it's about promoting the carbon credits, the control, all of this digital prison that they want us to live in. I was even vilified for calling this out, but the truth will come out and people will realize soon that the climate alarmism is not a conspiracy and climate and green are two really different things.
Yeah, the problem with the climate agenda is it aligns with the objectives of a number of groups. One of those groups is Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, all the big finance houses who are huge into the climate thing because it's hugely enriching for them. And the Rockefeller Foundation, for example, big into climate now. They were big into oil before, but they're big into the climate stuff now because they can make money out of the climate thing. You've got a political aspect to it, East versus West. China, India versus Europe and the USA. And there's a huge shift there, attempting to shift the power to the East. And they're using climate as the lever for that. And then you've got all of the traditional Marxists, greenists, the eco warriors, humanists, etc., who have always been on the whole climate side of things. And so they're aligned. So you've got this alignment of these different groups with very different motivations, perhaps, and just spreading the great lie. We'll put a link in the description to a book from the Club of Rome, The First Global Revolution. This link to the first, will give you the reference in that particular book. The Club of Rome are the chief advisors to the World Economic Forum and have been for the last 30, 40 years. There's nothing new about that. It's not a conspiracy theory. They exist. They produces this book called the First Global Revolution. And their books are referenced by the WEF. It's not publicized, though. The Club of Rome would be quite a secret kind of organization. You won't see them mentioned in the mainstream. And in that particular book, I think it's from 1995, they talk about the single uniting force on the planet would be the environment, temperature change, climate change, that's the unifying force that we can use for the first global revolution. Do you get it?
Yep.
So have a read of that book. And we, there's Sandi Adams has done a lot of research into this, and she covers it quite extensively. So we'll have links to her website as well. And she's actually been at this for years, researching this whole area. And she basically, she calls out that particular reference as well. That's one of the references she gives. So just beware, right? That's why you need to be looking at alternative sources of information. Now, the last thing we're going to show to wrap this up is the video from the World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So we've just kind of talked about what that might look like. It goes back a few years. It's a few years old now, and it probably hasn't aged well. But 8 predictions for the world in 2030. And remember, right now, we're on the path to Agenda 2030 with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Basically, what happened there is this stuff was developed, handed over to the United Nations, so the United Nations are implementing it. But the policy would have been heavily influenced by the WEF.